Okay, our third talk of the session will be the talent study, a randomized trial evaluating an ultra-thin strut bioabsorbable polymer-based coronary drug-eluting stent in all-comer patient population by Dr. Serruys. Thank you.
So talent randomized trial evaluating an ultra-thin struts bioresorbable polymer-based coronary drug-eluting stent in all population, together with our PI, Afzar Zaman, Robert de Winter, and Upendra, Kaul. This is my disclosure. So the background is that a recent meta-analysis showed that ultra-thin struts DES, less than 70 micron, reduced the incidence of TLF compared with contemporary thicker strut DES. Safety and efficacy of Supraflex sirolimus eluting stent, the technology from India, and SMT with ultra-thin struts and biodegradable polymer compare with Xience everolimus in an all-comers population. Since clinical outcome of contemporary drug-eluting stents are reaching a safety plateau, it is likely that cost-effectiveness will influence in the near future the stent market. The price cap of coronary stent in India is an interesting issue. The Indian stent market is around 0.555 million stents annually, with more than 90% drug-eluting stent with a value of about $1 billion. The market is growing around 15% annually. It is expected to become the second large international market after China by 2020. You see the effect of the stent price capping going to €400 for the DES and 110 for metal stent. And Upendra made an editorial on that topic, include a boon of a bane, and he listed what are the positive impact that leaves for his country. More people can afford PCI, more patients with multivessel disease will opt for PCI instead of CAP, boost for domestic industry made in India. However, regulation requires for Indian companies to demonstrate that their product is non-inferior to other proven stents by outcome data in RCT, and that's the talent which was conducted by the European Clinical Research Institute together with the Cardialysis for the statistical analysis and the organization. And you see listing the member of the clinical event committee and the member of the data and safety board. We are dealing with a cobalt chrome stent, highly flexible, 60 micron across all stent diameter, from 2 to 4.5 millimeter. Top layer, no drug, it's a protective layer of polyvinyl pyridine. The base layer is 100% drug with the sirolimus mixed with PLLA and PLGA. Coating, the average 4.5 micron. This is the drug by millimeter square, 4.4. There is an initial non-inferiority trial, composite of death, target vessel myocardial infarction, and clinically indicate target lesion revascularization in the Supraflex arm compared to the Xience arm at 12 months post-procedure. As you could see, we took the rate of event of Xience in the Resolute trial, 83%, non-inferiority of 4%, one side type 1 error 0.05, 85% power to detect non-inferiority, and assume a loss to follow-up of 3%. A total of 1,435 patients were included. They are all comers, and ischemic syndrome, STEMI, non-STEMI, unstable angina, stable angina, any type of lesion, left main, saphenous vein graft, CTO, and so on, and unrestricted use of DES number and length. You see the randomization one by one, 11% group, 7 withdraw in the other group, and we have 1 loss of follow-up. You know the definition of TLF. We use in this case the definition of SCI for peri-procedural MI, and after that the third universal definition. And we end up with 98.4% of the patient at follow-up in the Supraflex and 98.8% in the Xience. This is the classical table of baseline characteristics by randomization. They are well balanced, just a small abnormality in previous but otherwise previous MI, previous PCI are very similar. I will draw your attention to the indication only in 40%, 43% stable angina, acute coronary syndrome 59, 56, unstable angina 16, 26, and STEMI 16%. The lesion characteristic is also quite classic, number of the lesion per patient, 1.45, 1.44, total stent length 37 millimeter, about 16, 17% of the patient have TIMI 0, flow 0 of 1, some restenotic lesion, and a large number of rather small vessel or lesion longer in 49% in both groups. Bifurcation 16%. At the time of the procedure, pre-dilatation in the three-quarter patient, maximal balloon diameter at pre-dilatation was slightly larger in the Supraflex. Otherwise, the number of stent per lesion was 1.2, total stent length 25, overlapping stent 21% and 19.5. In general, the same nominal stent diameter, 50% get the post-dilatation, and the maximal pressure was 17%. Device success, 997 lesion versus 1,003. Able to cross the lesion versus 3 in the Xience, 1 stent dislodgement versus 0, and then the allocated stent did not cross the lesion and was crossover to Xience in 12 cases, 57%, and other stent. In-stent residual stenosis, more than 2%, 0.1% in both cases. So the device success is 97.6 and 99.5, which is a very high percentage. The crossover to non-allocated stent was somewhat clustered in 7 out of the 23 centers. Some investigated had the tendency to quickly cross over to a more familiar stent technology. You see again the device success. What is reassuring is that the in-hospital DOCE was the same, 1.5, 1.4, giving you a procedural success of 95.6 and 98.3. Device success of 97.6 is quite similar to what we saw in Resolute, in Twente Resolute, in the MyStent, in the FIRE-ORC of Target, and in the BioFlow, which is not an all-comers. Now, the primary endpoint is pretty good. The Xience, 5.3%, quite remarkable, one of the lowest I have seen, but the Supraflex was 4.9%. And you could see that the difference was minus 0.3. So if you look at the primary endpoint in terms of non-inferiority, 4.9, 5.3, we have that the difference of minus 0.3. You see the non-inferiority margin for the one side 95% confidence bound is here with a value of 1.6. People will say this is a inferiority of margin, so what we did, we took the value of the current rate of the Xience, apply an hazard ratio of 1.4, and calculate again the non-inferiority margin, which is now 2.12, and the p-value is still there, so very robust type of data. You see here the component of all-cause, the DOCE on one hand, the target vessel MI, quite superimposed, cardiac death 7 versus 1, and clinically indicated TLR 4% versus 2.7%. I was somewhat puzzled by this number, so we look very carefully to this issue, but that's first the definite and probable stent thrombose 0.9, 0.8, definite, probable, and even possible thrombose 1.1, 0.9. In terms of cardiac deaths, in the Supraflex, there was one definite stent thrombose confirmed by autopsy. In the Xience, there were also one definite stent thrombose confirmed by autopsy. 2 cases died 15 minutes, 30 minutes after the procedure in VT and VF as a residual of significant lesion unable to be dilated to calcium, and a long STEMI due flow limiting dissection at the proximal edge of the stent. In the Xience, there was also one STEMI with no reflow who died on the day of the procedure. In the Supraflex, you had 2 well-known heart failures, not a contraindication, who died at follow-up. Unexplained deaths, 2 with possible stent thrombose. I look in the literature for all-cause mortality of the Xience. It's 2.2 in the target, 2.6 in the bioscience, 2.2 in the Twent, 2.8 in the resolute. The all-cause mortality in this trial is maybe the play of chance. Finally, the per-protocol analysis, you could see we did the stent allocated. This is DOCE 4.4 and 3.5. And then finally, the clinically indicated TLR 3.1 and 1.2. There is a p-value of 0.021 with the log rank, potentially a 61% relative reduction. It is interesting that in the subgroup analysis, this only p-value for interaction is for the vessel size, somewhat favorable for the Supraflex in the large vessel, maybe a little bit less in the small vessel. I remind you that the 60 micron struts is all across the diameter up to 45. So in conclusion, the Supraflex biodegradable polymer was non-inferior to the Xience durable polymer everolimus for DOCE at 12 months in an all-comers population with a lower rate of clinically indicated TLR in the per-protocol analysis. The study results have important economic implications in countries with capped stent price, such as India, and in some European countries with competitive pricing and different model of healthcare cost saving. Market competitiveness may influence on which stent to use. My last slide is to thank all these remarkable investigators. You could see that it was an all-comers. Rob DeWinter, PI, recruited 224 patients in a very short period of time, as well as Dr. Tonino and Ofma. Thank you very much.
Congratulations on your study and a superb presentation.